Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. Welcome to my channel. So today we are doing Insider Movies 18. So it's so good to have you. We're going to go inside some movies that we have not covered before, but I talked about on my Twitter feed. So if you are new to my channel and new to my Twitter feed, I am so glad to have you. It is wonderful that we are growing so fast and so strong. It must mean that this is important, and what we're doing here together is very, very important. If we are actually being censored, that means we are onto something. We must be onto something. So anyway, as I've said before, as I've covered in my research before, they are not actually censoring conservative media. They are actually censoring out historical data. So they are actually deleting things like Senate hearings, and they are deleting news stories on voter fraud and news stories on, say, like senators, things that they've done in the past, which have nothing to do, whether it's a Democratic senator or they've even taken down videos on some of the Florida shooting victims. They've taken down victims' videos, like testimony from victims, just interviews with victims. They've deleted them. So, and so I have learned to just go where the deletions are. If they have deleted something, then I follow that trail. It means I'm on to the right thing. So that's where I go. So anyway, so let's go on to the movies. I want to cover, because we talked about it on the Twitter feed, I figure it's time to do them. So on my Twitter feed this week, we talked about a movie series. We talked about Lord of the Rings, and in it I said that my group, my Insider Movies group, that I require all of them to actually see these movies before joining my group. So I guess it's time to talk about who my insiders are, who is in my industry, a little bit about that. Since I haven't done it, I keep saying go ahead and see Insider 7, because I talk about that, which you can. Insider 7 is here. I talk about Ridley Scott, and it's a really, really great episode. It's a really good episode. Actually, it's one of my best. If you've seen my Insider Movies series, it's really grown over time. But I do talk in the beginning about who my insider group is, but I'll talk a little bit about that, what that is here. So since I have grown so much, and we really should cover it. So my insider group is basically, I wrote a bunch of books, and I didn't write them for Hollywood, though I grew up in Hollywood, and I didn't grow up in Hollywood. Gosh, that sounds ridiculous. I didn't. I went to a school that was like on the, when I would walk down to class, I would walk along Sunset Strip, even though it was not related to Hollywood, whatever. Though they did really try to talk me into going to film school, but my parents told me that they would cut me off for all eternity, which, should have told me something about their politics. We weren't allowed to talk about politics in the house. That turns out, I found out when we got older, we didn't know why that was. It turned out when we got older that it turned out my mother and my father were opposite. One was a Democrat and one was a Republican, which is great. I think that really kind of I think that's why I'm an independent, because it just allowed me to think freely, though I think that my mother did try to persuade me, but I think my father did, but they just didn't talk politics ever. I think that, it's a very fascinating thing. They allowed me to think freely when it came to politics. I think that there are things and values and things like that they all do, like all parents do. You walk away with values. But a lot of those values for me, I didn't have a good childhood. If you watch my channel, so I did not have a good childhood, and I had to really undo a lot of those values. So anyway, so I went to a school on purpose in LA because I wanted to go to school as large as I could. I specifically went to a school back then that was like 95,000 students large. I liked being around a lot of people, which is ironic because now I'm sick and disabled and in a house, which, by the way, if you have been with me for a while, you're noticing that I'm standing up and that my hair is like washed. I know this is for you guys who have been with me. You've seen my, if you saw my Clinique video or whatever, this is as good as my hair ever gets, as much as I can handle, actually doing it. And I'm like, oh, this is as good as it ever gets. And it's down, and I'm fighting. I'm like wearing it down as much as I can. And I'm standing up and I'm like doing that as much as I can. But I filmed that last September. This is the first time I've been able to do that since last September. But I really try to push it when I can actually do it. So, but I was like, oh my gosh, last time I did this for you was last September, but I'm doing it again. So I was like, I better wear my hair down since it's down and like show you guys that like I did it again. But this time, like I took a shower and everything. Like I didn't have to use the bench as much. I'm very, very happy. So back to the Insider Group. The Insider Group is basically, so I wrote a book, and because I went to a school that was there, I did know a lot. I had heard a lot, and I made a lot. Like when I go down to the streets and cafes, I'd meet people. But I didn't write a book. Like I moved on and I did other industries, and eventually I wrote some books, and I didn't write it for that industry. But it picked up in the Hollywood industry, and they started reading my books, and they kind of passed it along. And in this underground way, like my writing like really, really spread, kind of like my writing's doing now. It's kind of funny because all these people are getting my writing now, and I'm learning who it's going to, and I'm learning who it's affecting and all. And I'm kind of like, wow, these are really big names. And I was like, your writing did that last time. That's like how you have all your insider friends. What are you kidding me? Like, you should have known that. Like my husband comes home from lunch and I'm like, did you know this person? And he's like, why are you surprised? And I'm like, right. So that's how I did it. It's just that this time they don't allow me to get my email anymore. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but my email account is like blocked. I'm getting 0 emails anymore. Like that has stopped. So now I just see it in like television and stuff when it's affected. So I'm just happy it's getting out there, and I hear it through my insiders who's hearing about it. And that's wonderful. And through your donations and things like that, that's the only way that I know that it's growing. And I'm very, very thankful for that. So anyway, the insiders. So my writing really, really grew. And, then when I moved on from writing, when I stopped writing and I got really, really sick, that group actually became kind of like my friends. Like we kind of moved on because we kind of had a same mentality, the boss mentality I've talked about. We were all kind of boss. And then that group kind of grew and then grew and grew. And then, so we all just kind of kept in touch. And then what happened was there was a guy in the group that started becoming really, really big in Hollywood. And he was from another country. And you guys aren't aware of it, but there are like, we hear about these countries in these glowing terms. Like even now, they're just like this glowing thing. And this country's this and this country's this. But you have to go there to find, you like really have to go there into the sticks to find out what their culture's really like. And boy, the things that we think they know, they don't know. And so they get here, and as they get bigger, they don't know anything. Like, and so they go on to set, and like people reference things to them, and then they say stupid things. Like they say stupid things, and they sound really, really ignorant. And because they think, oh, you're just from Europe, you obviously know this stuff. Everyone thinks if you're from Europe, you're going to know everything that we grew up with in American culture, and that's just not true. Like American media. You know, even when I went on my road trip from California, and when I lived in California, and we did my husband and I did like 38 states. We traveled like the whole, like I've been to like, I can't believe it. I think I've been to 48 states now. I've traveled and taught in 48 states, but when I was healthy. But we did one trip where we just went and met people in like 38 states, right? And I was like, the media is really different just when you cross the border. Like in California, they make you think everyone thinks like that. It is not. Like you go over, and it was very, very different in every single state. And things like Twitter and stuff like that, they take that California mentality and they really push it through on things like social media and things like that. It follows you when you see the things on your side. It's really kind of terrifying. So, but when you read the newspapers, when you're in the local places in each state, it's very, very different culture, right? So, which is why they're buying up all those papers. So anyway, but in Europe, it is very, very different. So they get here and they don't know what the Brady Bunch is, and they don't know what the Matrix is. And so what was happening is that we were getting into these movie nights. Like we were starting to watch these movies, and because he needed to like know these things to be on set, and his manager was calling me and being like, he really needs to know this, because I was really good. I just soaked up movies as a kid. Like, I think I was just like made for movies, and I kind of was like this little osmosis thing. I just like soaked up everything with movies. Everything I heard from the moment I was a little kid, I just soaked up everything, every little piece you'll see it through my Insider Movies series, the things that I remember. And so it's crazy from a very, very young age. And so I kind of stored all these stats and statistics. And I did the same thing when I was in LA. And I picked up all these things if I'd be sitting at a coffee house and if two producers were sitting next to me and stuff like that, and they'd be saying stuff, and then they'd pick up things, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, and then we'd start talking, and then, and I remember everything from that conversation. Does that make sense? So anyway, what I do is we go through the movie, but then we'd watch the movie at night, and then we get everybody on the line, and then these people would say we want to do it. And anyway, the basic thing is that we ended up getting this thing where I started making a list of everything he needed to know. And then the group kind of was like, it started small, and then they kind of all wanted to get in on it. And now we just have this huge group, and like, it started like one summer, and then like, oh my gosh. So, and I was healthier back then, and we would watch, like, sometimes we watched 2 movies a night. Oh my gosh. And we would just do these huge movie things, and I would pause, and I would give information on the movie. And I would give the background, and I give the background on the actor, and I give the background on everything. And I was so proud because there was this one moment he ran into this really, really big star at this really big thing, and everyone knew, and like, it was like big time A-list. And he just was like, and he was supposed to know this big thing that we hadn't done yet. Like this really, really big thing we hadn't done yet. Like we hadn't gotten to it yet. But we had done this. Like I showed him this one little thing. And he just blurted out like, how's this go for you? Like he just blurted it. And I was so proud. And it totally was something no one else knew. It was like this thing that was like this crowning jewel that like made that person's career. And like nobody knows it, but there's only the boss know it. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like a really, really big, and it just made them look so freaking good. Like it just made them, and it like made it, instead of looking stupid, he went from this to like, oh my gosh, you even know that? And it was like, boom. And so that you can see why the group would want to be like on the line all the time. So we get on Skype and we get on conference phone and we just get the whole group together and we do all these things. And then when I did my channel, I realized like what happened was as the group grew, we're getting like all these age ranges. And I said we had like 14 to like 85 or whatever. And I was learning that like the young people didn't know what the Matrix was. Like it was amazing to find out how many people in our culture, because we got this propaganda machine going. They don't really talk about older movies. They kind of want to shut the older movies out. They really want you only to consume media today because it's so propaganda driven, right? And all the movies today are so same. Even the music is so same. And so they're really not talking about the old movies. However, when you go on a movie set, they expect you to know it, right? They're like, well, you should know it. And like when they still mention it, when critics still mention it, they're like, well, you should know it. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't talk about it. Like, how's anyone supposed to know it? So that's what I started doing Insider Movies for, was to like let you know what they all expect you to know. I was like, here are the movies everyone thinks you know, but you don't know. Like, here's the one they all are like, well, of course you're supposed to know it, but they don't teach that at the film schools and things like that. So that's why I created Insider Movies. And so I'm going through with you, like I have a book, like it's sitting over it, and I showed it in Insider Movies 7, and I have a book and I'll link it down below. But it's a huge book and I have this huge list. And then we just check off the movies that we watched every night. So anyway, but what I said this week on Twitter is that for that group, and also I make a really big point. I did point this out in one of my really big Insider Movies. I really highly recommend you watch the November series. That's the best of movies. That I really gained a lot of followers from Hollywood in that. Anyone I didn't know ended up being with us on that one. So, but I really, really recommend that one. But in it, I said that I talked about how the fact that I don't mention names, and that's a boss thing. You don't mention names. Like, you don't do it. Like, the stars don't do it. Like, if they're mentioning other names, it's a paid gig. Like, you don't do it. That's how you lose friends. Like, that's how you lose friends. Like, you don't do it. So I talk about that in another video. And, but it's just like, deep water people know what I'm talking about, but you'll never hear me say I will never do it. And they have been wonderful, because there was a huge awards show and someone was watching me, and then they started watching me under the table, and other people started watching me under the table, and they started watching, and one of them knew. They were like, do you know this? And one of them actually is one of my insiders, and they got it. And like, they were so great, because They didn't, and I was just so grateful because they didn't like say who I was, because that's important to me. You know what I mean? Like it goes vice versa. Like you have to, and that's what you do. You have each other's back and things like that, and you don't share money. Like that's another insider thing. You do not share money. Like that's just one of those things. You earn your own money and things like that. And yeah, it's just one of those amazing, amazing. I don't know. I have to do that video for you guys about being boss, but I love my group. And now I have you guys. I feel like we're just growing, and I feel really lucky. So, all right. So now let's get into Lord of the Rings, and why is it, let's start with first, why do I make my insiders watch it? Well, you saw this week already why. It was just going to be one of those things that we had watched it rather early on, because when we did that huge trip, that trip really hit us hard, and we watched that movie and we felt like we had almost been through that trip. Like that trip, God, I'll have to do a video on that trip, but some really big things happened on that trip. And it just, when you watch the thing, it can be like, what I love about it, that in the books, is that it mirrors so much of life, and you can use it as life lessons. And so it was one of the earliest things that I watched with when we were smaller, and then before it really grew. And so we kept referencing it, and then other people would reference it while we were watching something, and they'd be like, oh, it's like this, oh, it's like this. And finally we just got to the point where like, you just have to watch it first, like to get in. And it's so funny how many Hollywood people, even though it's won all these Academy Awards, even though it's one of the best-selling movies of all time, how many people, they all know it, but how many Hollywood people have not watched it? Like, I can't think of an insider who was like, oh, I've seen it. Like recently, like in the last 2 years, I can't think of an insider who's joined that actually watched it. And then they end up watching it all night. Like they just watch it straight through. They're just like, like it's really, really great. So, because they hear things about it, but that's a lot of the propaganda machine. They hear things, oh, it's like for nerds or something. But then they get into it, and they realize that it wasn't ever written like that. Like, that's kind of like a paintbrush, a broad stroke that was written to write it off. But there's a reason why it's sold, just like Harry Potter. Like it was written for a broad general audience. There's a reason that it made so much money. It wasn't just for nerds. Don't make that. You know what I mean? So it's more like, kind of like Star Wars. It was written for a broad general audience that everyone can love and relate to. Anyway, and so there's a lot of real life lessons in it. And so just very recently, like the very next day, I was able to use it. Now that you've seen it, I was able to say, like, look, these are lessons, like things that we can learn. And it's very important for us to actually know, like, one of the things that I love about the movie is that it's very, very honest about the nature of evil. It came right at the time, and I know why that is now. Now we know that Soros just started really funding things right at the 2000 mark. I mean, he came at 93, but then he really started pouring hard into 2000. That's when he did like the Open Society and things like that, and really started hitting us hard, which is funny because didn't I say like movies really started changing right at 2000? There was a dramatic change at 2000. It's funny now watching podcasts of other people talking, going, oh, the movies really changed right at 2000. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. That's interesting because everyone's noticing it. And I've talked to the other Hollywood people who have changed, and they were like, yeah, I remember that's when I stopped watching the Academy. That's when I stopped going to the Academy Awards, was right at 2000. And now we know that there was a big funding machine behind that did that on purpose. And this was made right, it was already in production right at the 2000. It came out in like 01, 02, and 03. And so this was like the last one that it got in right at the end, and it wouldn't be made today. It would never be made today because it doesn't fit this extreme narrative, not the liberal, not the moderate, not the conservative, just this extreme 2% narrative. Not narrative. I think narrative is a terrible word, but this 2%, it's a very, very tight script, isn't it? It's a very, very narrow script that's very hard to get right. But you have to get it just right. And the thing is that it's conflicting, isn't it? It has a lot of contradictions. It's just they hide those contradictions from each other. Like they don't tell each other that, hey, by the way, we're funding this group that wants to kill this other group, that, by the way, if you all get in, you'll kill each other. Like, they don't tell each other that. So, and that's one of the things, the nature of evil. That's what I love about this. But with the push that they did with things like, Sopranos was one of the things that it pushed out and things like that. And Breaking Bad is one of the things that it pushed out. It pushed out this new narrative of that the bad men are actually good men, like they are the heroes, and that this new thing that, oh, the hero versus the villain is such a tired narrative. Really? Well, that's the narrative that sells. It's the narrative that absolutely sells. It's the thing that makes our policemen heroes. It's the thing that makes our firemen heroes. It makes us very proud of our military, is that the bad fight the good, like, or the good fight the bad. You know what I mean? And that is not a tired narrative. It's a hard thing to do. And when they do it, it's absolutely amazing. And it feels good. And it's amazing to watch. And it's inspiring. And it's the thing that got us freedom. It's the thing that ended slavery. I don't think that's a tired narrative. I think it's the thing that teaches us to fight. But they did it on purpose so that we wouldn't fight now. Like now we don't fight because we think fighting's bad. We think that the bad men are the good men. Like I even got an advertisement from PicMonkey or something. And it was like, congratulations from being with us. You know, we're now partners in crime and defeating all the bad marketing out there, like all the bad design out there. And I hate that narrative. Like that's because they've been changing. PicMonkey's been really changing and really pushing certain narrative, like really pushing, I'll get into that later. But I was just like, I don't want to be your partner in crime. And I don't want to go out and defeat other things. Like that's that power thing I talked about in Twitter. Like, I don't want to be that. Like I like to be your partner, you know what I mean? But I don't want to be your partner in crime. Crime is not a good thing. And I don't want to be I don't want to be going out there. My goal with being with you is not to defeat anybody else's design, is not to be better than anybody else's design. It's just to have good design, is to go out there and make great design. What's wrong with just saying that? Is to be excellent partners for the best design you can be, the best designer you can be, to bring out the best the best creative person you can be. Why can't we be partners in bringing the best creative minds together? What's wrong with that message? No, it has to be partners in crime to defeat all the, it said, boring and tired designs out there. And I was just like, thank you again for pointing out that we are better than other people. Like it's just droned in over and over and over that you have to be better than someone else. I hate that. So it's just that power thing. It's that power thing I talked about today in Twitter. Anyway, so it's that constant thing of you have to be better than someone else when it's not. That totally goes against equality for all. We are equal with one another. That completely goes against that. And it's what leads to violence, is when you think you're superior. That is exactly what slavery is. That's what we fought a civil war over, is the idea that we are equal to another and that no one is superior to another person. And we are letting that slip into society. So, oh God, maybe I have to end with PicMonkey, because we have to take action. Like we have to actually start taking action, because people are going to jail for just saying words. For the things that they say, and that's really, really terrifying. So anyway, I am like dropping subscriptions everywhere. So The Lord of the Rings is just this amazing movie where these lessons, like I said, the Rings of Power and all this stuff, I really hope that you go and read my Twitter. So let's go into the actual movies. So let's go into the actual movies themselves so that you can learn a little bit about those and get the inside scoop on those, as well, knowing that now a lot of Hollywood elite have actually watched them and now they're going to really expect you to know them. There's a few things that I really like. Let me tell you why I really, really value Lord of the Rings. Number one is that it shows that evil does exist and that its ultimate goal is to always fully control, like there is always an end goal. In the beginning, remember Tolkien wrote it about World War II, what he saw in World War II. Don't think it's a fictional place. Like I used to think it was a fictional place until I was really putting it in perspective of World War II. And I was just like, the hobbits are sitting in the beginning and they're just like, oh, we hear bad things at the borders, but keep to yourself, keep your nose clean and nothing will touch you. And that is exactly what the other countries said when Nazi Germany was developing. And that's why he wrote it. He specifically wrote it about that. And we know in the book and in the movie that they were coming for them. Like when you hear disturbing things at the border, it's a warning sign. When you start seeing red flags, keep your head down and nothing will happen to you. That is what evil wants you to think is going on. Like when you hear disturbing things at your borders. They are counting on our silence. They are counting on our inaction. And that is how Nazi Germany succeeded to go so far. Like, they only just barely got defeated, right? It was just on the hair. Just like, and that is exactly what they did in the movie, right? They defeated just on a hair. At just the last moment, it turned, like the tide turned just at the end. But remember what it took just at the end for the tide to turn. It took determination of the common man. That is his point, is that it took common men. It took common men and uncommon men who were willing to stand by the common men. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, he was very, very clear that all different men and women of different, they all came together and they put their lives on the line. They made the hard choice because they were willing to look all the way down the line, and they were willing to see what the end game really was instead of just the whispers. Instead of just the whispers. And maybe he was writing it as a warning to us, because I mean, we know Soros was raised in Hungary. He was raised right up his teenage years, his young years. Hungary was one of the axes, right? And he has declared in interviews, that he pillaged Jewish families. And he feels no guilt about it. It still lives. Like the ring didn't die. Like, that's a hard thing. No one wants to believe that. We all want to think it's completely dead. But that's what his wealth is built on. Where did his wealth come from? His wealth came from the Nazis. And the devastation he saw is okay to him. It was worth it to him. It is in his mind. And all those people he's wooed and given rings of power to. All these minority groups that he's giving power to. And saying, go defeat those who believe in equality. And go defeat the Constitution that stands in my way. You don't think he'll let them burn? When they run Andrew Yang on a theory of full automation and equal pay, you think that it'll stay at 1,000 per family? That's what YouTube did. They started at good pay, and then it went lower and lower. We've done the lords and feudal system. We've done that, and that's when Robin Hood happened. They have wooed them into willingly going into servant positions. They've even, through H&K, they've even gotten women to dress like peasants. Like daughters have to ask for a dress because the mothers think that it's wrong to push a dress on a daughter. They have us already embracing peasant culture. Not that, like I'm saying, like the dressing, like the no makeup and the plains clothes and the jeans, and taking away the ferocity that can be woman. I didn't know what I wore was so shocking. I had no idea. But then I learned that they're trying to erase it. Oh, the powerful women wear it. Oh, the powerful women wear it. But the H&K women, they're selling American women. Why do you think that is? Look what's happening in Europe. They're using feminists right now, this feminist movement, the Her movement. They're using them to knock down in order to let Sharia law take over. What do you think Sharia law will do to those women? Not Sharia law, just Islam. What do you think they'll do to those feminists? Like, the Pussy Riot is nothing like... And it's all in the plan. Like, it's all in this little plan. And I didn't ever give that movie to them as a way of preparing for this. I'm giving the movie to you guys as a way of preparing for this. It still lives. And the thing is that through all this media since 2000, they have taken your will to fight. And this movie will give it back to you, because we all have it. We shut down slavery. We fought civil war. We shut down the Nazis. We can stand up to a... We watch on the news. You know why the anchors have conservatives on TV? Do you know why they do that? They do that to show what happens, what they want you to think happens when you speak up at work. They want you to think that's the way you'll be talked to. It's a lie. They want you to think everyone will yell at you. That's a lie. You can talk to other people. They're reading off of scripts. American people don't talk to each other like that. They talk to each other and they listen. And if they don't, if you run into a script, you don't have to talk to them. They're just a script. And if you can, if you're the parent of a script, get them a job, make them get a job, or don't let them live in your home, because it's just an excuse not to have a job. That's the whole point. They're selling them on not working in order to feel better than others. It's just, this movie is just a gift to you. Please enjoy it and know that it's in you. He wrote it based on what happened. We did it before. It's in us. They try to make us forget, but we didn't. It was a massive movie. Huge awards. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Franchises everywhere. Because man didn't forget. We're made to be equal. And we're made to be free.